I opened my birthday gift and watched my father fall before midnight. My name is Rachel Miller. I am 32. I work nights as a nurse in Missouri. I can read a heart monitor from across a room. I can smell when adrenaline is about to hit a vein. I can talk a panicked stranger back from the edge. None of that helped me the night a plane package changed my family forever. It was my birthday morning. The porch was wet from a light rain. A box sat against the railing. No bow, no card, taped tight. When I lifted it, I felt the weight of glass in my hands. Inside was a bottle of dark amber whiskey with a waxed seal and a label that looked expensive. On the brown paper, someone had written "Happy Birthday" in a hand I knew by muscle memory. The loops, the pressure, the tilt to the right. My sister Sophia. I had not seen her in years. Not at Christmas, not at Thanksgiving, not when our mother Helen had surgery, not when our father Thomas broke his wrist. The house was small when we were girls. It felt smaller once we grew into the roles our parents gave us. I became the reliable daughter, early to work, late to leave, the one who called first and apologized first. Sophia became the one who pushed back, loud in the kitchen, quiet in her room. She left after a final fight that shook the pictures on the wall and did not look back. I stared at the bottle on my counter. I do not drink. I have a heart condition that hates alcohol. That is not a secret in my family. Sophia knew it then. She knows it now. I told myself the gift was a peace offering, a sign that time can soften even the hardest edges. I wanted to believe that. I wanted my mother to see both her daughters at the same table without fear. I wanted my father to smile at something I did. So I brought the bottle to dinner. My mother set out plates and folded napkins the way she always does. My father sat at the head of the table the way he always does. He talked about the neighborhood, about taxes, about the game on Sunday. I placed the bottle by his plate. I told him it was a special one. He raised his eyebrows like a man who has earned a surprise. He said it looked like a celebration. I told him he should have the first glass. I told him I could not drink it. He said that made it more for him. He twisted the seal. He poured. The liquid caught the light like a small fire. He lifted the glass. He nodded at me. For a moment, the room felt easy. My mother smiled in that careful way she saves for rare evenings. I let myself breathe. He drank. He set the glass down. He started a sentence and did not finish it. His mouth went pale. His eyes lost their focus. His hand went to his chest. The chair legs scraped the floor. The glass tipped and rolled and fell. I was on my feet before it broke. I touched his neck. His pulse was slow and wrong. I told my mother to call. She could not find her voice, so I grabbed my phone and did it for her. I kept my father upright. I counted breaths. I counted beats. I listened for the sound of the siren. The medics took him fast. I followed in my car with my hazards on. I parked crooked and ran the corridor I know too well. They pushed him past triage. They drew blood. They started fluids. They asked me what he had eaten and what he had drunk. I told them he had a single glass. I told them it was from a new bottle. I told them it was a gift from my sister, who does not speak to us. A doctor pulled me aside. He said it looked like more than a bad heart. He said the labs might show a plant-based toxin. He said they would know more in 48 hours. I looked at my hands. They smelled like whiskey and soap. The bottle sat at home on our table like a loaded hour. My father had taken one glass to celebrate my birthday. He was in a hospital bed by nightfall, and I could not shake the thought that the gift had never been meant for him. Before I tell you what happened next, Ask yourself this: if your estranged sister sent you a gift, would you trust it? The hospital smelled like bleach and burnt coffee, the kind of air that sticks to your skin. Machines beeped steady but uneasy. My father lay on a bed, pale and wired up, his chest rising in shallow waves. I stood at the foot of the bed, still in my work scrubs. Though I was not on shift, the doctor pressed a clipboard to his side as if he wanted the facts to hold themselves together. His blood work shows signs of plant toxins, he said. Not alcohol, not food. Something unusual. The whiskey you mentioned, where is it? At home. On the table. In the kitchen, where I left it. I told him. He wrote quickly. He asked if anyone else had touched it. I thought of my mother's hands, brushing the label. Her voice, saying it looked too expensive for us. I thought of my own fingers, pulling the cork for my father, because he was too impatient to work it loose. The doctor's words hung like smoke. Plant poisoning. That is not an accident. That is not a bad batch. That is deliberate. My mother, Helen, sat in the plastic chair beside the bed. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Finally, she whispered, "Why would Sophia send that? Why now?" I wanted to say, maybe it was not her. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the bottle was swapped at the store. But my voice cracked. I recognized her handwriting. My mother looked at me sharp. "You gave it to him." The guilt tore through me. She was right. I had been the one to pass it across the table. I had been the one who thought one glass might buy us peace. My father's monitor beeped, too slow and too steady, like it had decided to prove my failure in front of us all. Hours stretched. Nurses checked vitals. Shadows moved across the tile. My mother barely spoke. When she did, it was only to repeat the same line. "Your sister knew." Each time she said it, I felt the weight of the bottle in my own hands again. By midnight, I went home. The house looked the same, but felt stripped bare. The bottle was still on the table, half full. I stared at it like it might speak if I waited long enough. My mind twisted back and forth. Could Sophia really do this? Or was I letting years of silence paint her as something she was not? I remembered her laughter, the way she used to sit cross-legged on the porch with me counting stars. But I also remembered her last words before she slammed the door years ago. "One day, you'll regret taking everything from me." I poured water. I sat on the couch. The clock ticked too loud. My phone buzzed. A number I did not know. No name. Just one message. "That bottle wasn't meant for him. It was meant for you." The glass slipped in my hand. Water spilled across my lap. My pulse hammered in my throat. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. Someone knew. Someone was watching. And whoever it was wanted me to understand. My father lay in a hospital bed, fighting for his life. But the true target had been me all along. The night after that message, I could not sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like someone moving through the hallway. Every shadow looked like it carried her face. My sister, Sophia. When I was a child, my parents said she was the wild one. The one who cut her own hair with kitchen scissors. The one who refused to wear the church dresses our mother ironed flat. I was the quiet one, the sick one, the one they worried about. The comparisons grew like weeds between us. By high school, they bloomed into something worse. My father Thomas started saving money for me. Money meant for Sophia's college fund. He said I needed treatment, specialists, surgery, pills that came in amber bottles that rattled like guilt every time I shook them. I remember the look on her face when she overheard him. "So my future pays for her heart?" she asked. No one answered. Silence was crueler than words. I told myself for years she would forgive me because I had not asked for it, because illness is not a choice. But standing in my kitchen with that text on my phone, I realized some debts never fade. They ferment. The next afternoon, I drove to the edge of town where Sophia had been renting a small house with a garage out back. I had not been there in years. The siding was peeling. The porch sagged. A wind chime tapped without music. My stomach felt hollow as I pushed the garage door open. Inside smelled of dust and dried earth. Shelves lined the walls, each crowded with glass jars. Some filled with brittle stems and brown leaves, others with powders fine as sand. Every label was written in the same tight handwriting I had seen on the bottle wrapping. I stepped closer. One jar was marked snake root, another belladonna. I felt my pulse quicken. On a workbench lay a notebook. Its cover was cheap cardboard, edges curled. I flipped it open. Pages filled with notes, numbers, and strange markings. Some entries had initials. T.D., my father's name, Thomas Dalton, and then my own, R.M. Rachel Miller. Beside each were measurements, drops, doses, as if we were experiments instead of family. My hands shook so badly the notebook almost slipped. There it was. Proof. Not just suspicion. Not just anger twisted by memory. But written evidence that my sister had measured out poison with our names at the top of the page. My throat closed around air. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn the whole place down. But another part of me ached so deep it felt like bone. Because she was still my sister. Because the girl who once braided my hair and hid fireflies in mason jars had become someone I no longer recognized. I pressed a hand to my mouth and whispered the question I could not stop from rising. If you found proof your own sister wanted to hurt you, would you turn her in or hide it? The pages rattled in my hand. The air shifted. And then a voice. You shouldn't be here. I froze. The notebook slipped from my grip and landed on the workbench with a dull slap. I turned slowly. Sophia was standing in the doorway. Dust on her jeans, shadows across her face. Her eyes locked on mine with a calm that felt sharper than any scream. Her voice pinned me in place. You shouldn't be here, Sophia said again. Softer this time, like the calm before a storm. I swallowed hard, the notebook still lying open on the workbench between us. Pages of doses, initials, and plants stared up like evidence too sharp to look at straight. My throat felt dry. What is this, Sophia? I asked. But my voice cracked. She stepped forward, boots crunching on the concrete floor. It's the truth. Something this family has refused to see my entire life. Her eyes burned with years of resentment. They took everything from me, Rachel. Every chance I had. My college fund? Gone. My future? Spent on saving you. I was the afterthought. The spare part. You got the sympathy. I got the scraps. My chest tightened. I didn't ask for that. I never wanted you to... She cut me off, slamming her palm down on the bench so hard the jars rattled. You didn't stop it either. You let them steal my life. And now you're shocked that I want yours to feel as empty as mine? Her words sliced deeper than I expected. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to stand taller. You tried to kill Dad. That poison. Her laugh was sharp, bitter. That was never meant for him. He just got in the way. But you, Rachel, you were always the target. The room spun. For a moment, I thought my knees would give out. You're my sister, I whispered. She tilted her head. And you were supposed to be mine. But instead, you became theirs. The silence between us swelled. until it felt like the walls were leaning closer. I backed toward the door, my pulse racing so loud I could hear it in my ears. She didn't follow. She just stood there, eyes locked on me, as if daring me to choose whether to believe her or not. I broke. I bolted through the doorway into the cold air. My car door slammed, my hands gripping the wheel like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Gravel sprayed behind me as I tore down the road, my chest rising and falling in jagged bursts. By the time I reached home, night had settled thick over the neighborhood. The porch light flickered weakly, as if unsure it could push back the dark. I stepped inside, and my stomach sank. The living room window stood open. Curtains swayed in the cool night air. My heart dropped as my eyes fell to the kitchen table. A bottle sat there. Whiskey again. This one, half empty, the cork tossed carelessly beside it. A glass still wet on the rim. I stumbled back, shaking my head. Not again. Not another bottle. But as I moved closer, I saw more. A folded sheet of paper tucked under the glass. My hands trembled as I opened it. The handwriting was the same I'd seen on the package. My sister's. One bottle was never the plan. The words hit me like ice water. My stomach turned cold. This wasn't a single act of bitterness. It was a design, a chain of steps laid out like a map. Sophia hadn't just sent me poison. She had a plan, and tonight was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table, the open window rattling in the breeze, staring at the bottle Sophia had left behind. My hands itched to call the police, to end this nightmare before it spread any further. But instead, I drove back to her garage at dawn. The notebook still sat on the workbench, waiting. I slipped it into my bag. The pages felt heavier than stone, like they carried the weight of a verdict no one wanted spoken out loud. I should have walked straight to the police station. I should have handed it over and let the law put distance between me and the sister who hated me. But I didn't, because deep down, I was terrified of what it would mean for my father, for Thomas Dalton, the man who had built his reputation on discipline, strength, control, to be known as the father of a would-be poisoner. How could he face his church friends, his old co-workers, the entire town? He would crumble under that humiliation. And part of me, maybe the same guilty part that once handed him that first glass of whiskey, still wanted to protect him, protect our family name, even if it meant risking myself. So I kept the notebook. I tucked it inside a fireproof box in the hall closet, behind my birth certificate and old tax forms, as if hiding it with official papers would make it less real. That evening, I sat with my mother in the hospital cafeteria. Helen looked drained, her eyes swollen from nights without rest. She stirred her coffee, though she never drank it. Finally, she spoke. "Rachel," she whispered, "there's something I should have told you earlier." Her voice cracked, and she pulled a folded envelope from her purse. The paper was yellowed, the edges worn. She slid it across the table. I opened it with trembling fingers. It was a letter, scrawled in the same sharp handwriting that haunted me. "Sophia's, you think you can bury me with your silence, but one day I'll show you how it feels to be erased. Don't say I didn't warn you." I stared at the words until they blurred. "You knew," I whispered. "You knew she was dangerous, and you said nothing." Tears slipped down my mother's cheeks. "I thought she just needed time. I thought it was her anger talking. I couldn't destroy what little bond you girls had left." My chest ached. "So you let us sit at that table, knowing she could act on this? You let Dad drink from that glass?" Her silence was louder than any confession. I leaned back, the chair screeching against the tile. For the first time, I realized my mother wasn't just a victim of Sophia's rage. She had been keeping secrets, shielding us from truths I hadn't been strong enough to face. And if she had hidden this letter, what else had she buried? I clutched the notebook tighter under my arm. My decision to hide it suddenly felt heavier, more dangerous. My sister wasn't the only one playing with silence. My mother had been too. And now, the cost of all that silence was closing in around us. The second bottle sat on my counter, like a dare. I couldn't bring myself to pour it out, couldn't bring myself to taste it, and yet I couldn't ignore it either. So I called someone I trusted, Gary Mitchell, an old friend from nursing school, who now worked in a toxicology lab at the university. He owed me a favor after I'd covered his shifts years ago. But more than that, I knew he wouldn't ask too many questions. "Bring it over," he said, voice low, cautious. "Don't open it. Don't touch the cork. Just wrap it and come after dark." So I did. I drove across town with the bottle swaddled in an old sweatshirt, the glass cold against my knees, as if it knew what it carried. In the back of my mind, I replayed Sophia's face in the garage. Her calm fury, her words about me being the target all along. Gary met me at the side entrance of the lab. He didn't ask why my hands shook when I passed him the bottle. He just nodded and disappeared inside. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I waited, my palms damp against my thighs. An hour later, he returned. His expression was heavy. "Rachel," he said carefully, "there's something in it. White snake root. Do you know what that does?" I did. I'd studied enough toxicology to understand. White snake root was the same plant that had poisoned settlers 2 centuries ago. The one that slipped into cow's milk and turned it deadly. In the right concentration, it could stop a heart within hours. My chest constricted. "So it's true. She really—" My words trailed. Gary placed a steady hand on my shoulder. This wasn't an accident. Whoever prepared this knew exactly what they were doing. I drove home in silence. Streetlights carved the road into pale slices of gold. My father was still in the hospital. My mother still clinging to half-truths. And now, the one thing I'd been praying wasn't real, was staring me in the face. Sophia hadn't just wanted to send a message. She wanted someone gone. Maybe me. Maybe all of us. When I pulled into the driveway, the night felt heavier than usual, the air thick as wool. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and froze. Something white lay folded just inside the threshold. I bent slowly, my heartbeat pounding in my ears, and picked it up, a photograph. It showed my own house, taken at night, the porch light glowing, the window curtains half drawn. No people, no figures, just my home, caught from across the street like prey under a hunter's scope. The back of the photo was blank. I locked the door, checked the windows, then checked them again. My hands shook as I slid the photo into the fireproof box with the notebook. It felt like sealing away my own fear. I leaned against the wall, every nerve awake. This wasn't just about Sophia's bitterness anymore. Someone was watching me. Maybe her, maybe someone else. The line between family and threat had blurred until I couldn't see it anymore. I pressed my hands to my face, whispering the question I knew anyone would ask if they stood in my place. What would you do if danger came not from strangers, but from your own blood? I never thought the walls of a hospital room could feel more suffocating than a prison cell. But that morning, when I walked into my father's room and heard his voice, again, sharp as glass, I realized freedom has nothing to do with open doors. It has everything to do with what people chain you to. Thomas Dalton, my father, was awake. His color had returned, but so had the bitterness that had carved itself into him decades ago. His eyes locked on me, and instead of gratitude, they burned with accusation. "This is your fault," he rasped, his voice rough but steady enough to cut. "You and that sister of yours. You dragged this family into ruin." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The monitors beeped in calm, indifferent rhythm, as if mocking my own racing heart. I had spent days fearing for his life, sacrificing sleep, sanity, and any semblance of safety. And this was what I got in return. Detective Reyes stood near the corner of the room, arms folded, watching the exchange with that cop's quiet restraint. He didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. He knew this wasn't about police work. It was about a daughter still trying to be seen by the father, who would never look at her without judgment. "I didn't put that poison in your glass," I whispered, my throat tight. "I gave you the bottle because I can't drink, because I thought it would make you happy." He coughed, shifting against the pillow, his lips curling into the same disdain I had grown up with. Always excuses, always playing the victim. You and Sophia, two sides of the same rotten coin. Sophia, her name, hung between us like a curse. Reyes finally spoke. "Mr. Dalton, your daughter is cooperating with us to make sure this doesn't happen again. She's not your enemy. The truth is..." But my father only turned his head, shutting his eyes, shutting me out. I walked out before the tears could spill, the weight of his words clinging to me like wet clothes. Out in the corridor, Reyes followed. "You can't let him break you," he said gently, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "Toxic people don't need poison in a bottle. They carry it in their words." I nodded, but the ache didn't fade. My father had survived, but in some ways, I wondered if I had lost him long before that whiskey touched his lips. We moved forward with the investigation. Reyes took my statements. We cross-checked Sophia's handwriting, the financial records, even the strange symbols in her notebook. Piece by piece, the puzzle was tightening around her. But, with every step toward the truth, my chest grew heavier, like I was betraying blood with every word I spoke. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by silence too thick to be comforting. The fireproof box I had started keeping, filled with notes, photographs, receipts, sat like a silent witness to everything I could not yet say out loud. I picked up the recorder Reyes had given me, pressed play, and listened to my own shaky voice, giving testimony earlier that day. I sounded like a woman trying to hold on to the idea of justice, even as the ground beneath her family cracked. That's when the phone buzzed. The screen lit up with an unknown number. My stomach twisted, a sick déjà vu. With trembling fingers, I opened the message. 7 words glared back at me in black letters. "If you testify, Mom will be next." I dropped the phone. For a long second, the room spun, and the air felt razor thin. Whoever sent that message knew exactly where to strike. My last thread of protection. The one person I had left who hadn't abandoned me completely. It wasn't just a threat anymore. It was a promise. And I had to decide whether I was brave enough or reckless enough to face it head on. I stared at the message until the letters blurred. "If you testify, Mom will be next." Fear pressed into my chest. I wanted to run straight to Detective Reyes, but my legs carried me first to the hospital. My mother sat in the waiting room, her hands folded, like she was praying for an answer that would never come. "Mom," I whispered, showing her the phone. "She's threatening you now." Her lips trembled. "From Sophia?" I nodded. She didn't look shocked, almost like she had been waiting for this. "She wasn't born with hate," my mother said softly. "She was fed it, by your father's favoritism, by my silence. And now it's grown into something we can't stop." I wanted to scream that poison isn't born from silence alone, that Sophia had chosen this path. But her eyes begged me not for agreement, but for understanding. Reyes arrived minutes later. His jaw tightened as he read the message. We move tonight. No more waiting. The next 2 days blurred, with patrol cars outside my home and officers shadowing my every move. Sleep slipped away. Every sound felt like Sophia creeping closer. Every breath felt borrowed. Then came the raid. At dawn, police stormed the sagging house where she had been hiding. They found jars of dried plants, powders labeled with Latin names, and notebooks filled with doses, pages of calculations with initials, TD for Thomas Dalton, RM for me. Precise measurements like we were lab rats in her private experiment. And then there was the letter. It was addressed to me. Rachel. It read, I never wanted you dead. I only wanted you to feel what I felt. Forgotten. Erased. You lived because I was sacrificed. You thrived because I was abandoned. I wanted you to taste my life, if only for a moment. One day, you'll see. It was never about death. It was about balance. My hands shook as I folded it. It wasn't an explanation. It wasn't forgiveness. It was blame, carved into ink. Sophia was arrested. The story hit the papers. Sisters, poison, revenge. Strangers argued online about whether she was a monster or a victim. But their noise couldn't reach the ache inside me. My father survived, but not as the man I once wished he'd be. He looked at me in his hospital bed, his voice still sharp. This is what happens when you protect weakness. He muttered. He meant Sophia. Maybe he meant me. My mother rarely spoke after that. When she did, it was half-truths, fragments. I realized she carried her own guilt like an anchor. She had known too much and done too little. And me? I was left with scars invisible to everyone else. I had survived, yes, but I had lost my sister long before the first drop touched the glass. Sometimes I wonder, what if I had gone to the police sooner? What if I had handed over her notebook the first moment I found it? Would my father still have collapsed? Would Sophia have stopped? The questions circle like vultures, but they never land. I still drive past her old house. Sometimes, boards nailed across the windows, silence pressing from inside. I picture her standing in that garage doorway, dust on her jeans, anger in her eyes. I imagine telling her I'm sorry, for things I never asked for choices I never made. I imagine her forgiving me. But imagination is not reality. Reality is knowing family wounds don't heal when arrests are made. They echo in the pauses of conversation, in the silence of mothers, in the coldness of fathers. Yet I have a choice. I can keep carrying her hatred forward, letting it poison what's left of me. Or I can set it down, even if forgiveness never comes. So I choose to breathe, to love when it feels fragile, to forgive even when it feels undeserved, to keep walking toward the light, even if shadows stretch long behind me. That is the only way to honor both the sister I lost and the one who once braided my hair under summer skies before the world split us apart. And maybe one day, that memory will be enough.